Thanks for joining us today on this edition of Business Daily. I'm Lee-Jiun in Seoul. We have a lot of stories lined up for you today, so let's get started with a look at the day's highlights. Korea's benchmark Kospi posts 11th in index gains among the G20 nations in the first half of this year on economic uncertainties both at home and abroad. We sit down with the managing director of a global recruitment company to talk about what issues stand at the center of Korea's unemployment problems and what could be done to start solving them. These stories and more coming right up. Korea's benchmark Kospi has recorded a general drop in the first half of the year, and this puts Korea in 11th place among G20 member countries and above the average performance of other major indices within the group. Our Kim Jung-soo starts us off.
Korea Exchange said Tuesday the benchmark Kospi has dropped around 1.7% from the end of last year as of Monday's close. This puts Korea in 11th place in the G20 in terms of stock index growth rates. On average, the stock market indexes of the 20 nations have dropped at a rate of around 3% during the same period. Emerging markets such as Argentina, Russia, and Brazil recorded the highest growth, with Argentina's index rising nearly 18% during the first 6 months. The United States came in at 10th, posting a roughly 1.5% drop, while China and Japan placed 18th and 19th. Britain, which is struggling in the aftermath of the country's decision to leave the EU, ranked 13th, with its benchmark index dropping around 4%. Industry-wise, Korea's pharmaceutical shares enjoyed the biggest growth, of over 20%, followed by shares of gas and electronics, which grew by 15% and nearly 7% each. Stocks for food companies, on the other hand, recorded the biggest drop at a rate of around 16%. Kim Jung-soo, Business Daily.
Korean companies have placed in the top 10 in 7 industries in terms of global sales, showing off the country's competitive muscle. But there's still room for improvement, as several Korean firms also placed out of the top 10 in 9 industries. Our Lee-Jiun reports.
Korean companies rank among the world's best across a variety of industries. A study by market researcher CEO Score released Wednesday shows Korean firms in 7 industries rank in the top 10 worldwide in terms of sales. The study surveyed 16 major industries that Korea has some level of competitiveness in. The findings were based on the sales figures for 2015, and multi-sector businesses like Samsung were ranked according to each unit's performance in individual industries. The method puts Samsung at a disadvantage against single business firms like Apple and Intel, but it still garnered positive results. Samsung Electronics placed first in the consumer electronics industry, with total sales for 2015 adding up to about $39.8 billion. Sony was second, posting above 70% of Samsung's sales. Korean tech company LG Electronics took third. Samsung also placed well in the semiconductor industry, coming in second with sales of $40.4 billion, or 73% of first-place finisher Intel. SK Hynix, which ranked second in the domestic market, ranked fifth in the global market. POSCO came second in the steel industry with about $49 billion in sales, just under 23% less than first-place finisher ArcelorMittal. Korea's second-largest steel producer, Hyundai Steel, ranked 7th worldwide. A number of other Korean firms ranked in the top 10 in 4 other industries, including tobacco and automobiles. But there is room for improvement. Korean firms placed out of the top 10 in 9 industries, including cosmetics and telecommunications. Korea's market leaders in healthcare, internet service, and retail accounted for less than 10% of the sales of the world's top firms. Lee-Jiun, Business Daily.
Korea's business confidence among manufacturers remained sluggish in June, with the index coming in at 71, unchanged since April. A reading under 100 means that pessimism outweighs optimism. The Bank of Korea's Manufacturers Business Survey Index had inched up for 2 months in March and April, but the trend was short-lived as the government-led corporate restructuring program dampened sentiment. The outlook for next month has dropped 2 points from the projection for June, as restructuring in the shipping and shipbuilding industries is expected to disrupt the already struggling job market on top of subdued demand from China. Bouncing back from the brink of bankruptcy, Korean phone maker Pantech is trying to win back its fame, unveiling a brand new smartphone targeting consumers in the mid-tier market. Our Lee Joo-young tells us more.
I am back is how a Korean would read the name of Pantech's brand new smartphone Sky IM100, signaling the long-troubled mobile phone maker's gloried return to the market after spending years restructuring the firm to pull itself out of a financial bog.
Pantech has seen all kinds of difficulties in the past, but we have finally taken our first step forward again with this new product.
The 5.1-inch display is Pantech's first handset in nearly 2 years after going under court receivership in 2014 with almost $500 million in debt. It was acquired by a consortium in a last-ditch effort last year. Priced just under $400, Pantech officials made it clear that they are shifting away from premium models to avoid competition with big players like Samsung and Apple.
The overall smartphone market may be stagnant, but the mid to low price market is still growing. I think Pantech's new model will give it some good results in that area.
Sky IM100 comes with a wireless charging device called Stone, which also functions as a Bluetooth speaker and a mood lamp. Pantech said it plans to roll out new models every 6 months and that it's in talks for export to the US, Japan, and Indonesia. But in the meantime, it hopes to sell at least 300,000 units by the end of the year in the Korean market. The phone will hit the shelves this Thursday and come in the colors Classic White and Platinum Black. Lee Joo-young, Business Daily.
Job prospects for Koreans, especially those in the younger age groups, are growing worse as the youth jobless rate here in the country hit a record high for the months of February through May. So today we take a look at what the underlying problems are and what can be done to create more quality jobs here in Korea.
The International Labour Organization says that over 73 million youth are jobless, and millions others are stuck in low-quality, informal work across the globe. And Korea is no exception when it comes to growing unemployment problems, with less than 300,000 jobs added both in April and May. The youth jobless rate has hit record highs in recent months. The outlook for youth employment remains a crucial part of a country's economy as it ties directly into economic growth, labor productivity, and birth rates. Adding to the current concerns, many economists are predicting the youth unemployment rate will continue to rise amid Korea's slumping exports and the government-led corporate restructuring drive. Industry data point to massive potential job losses, especially in the country's shipping and shipbuilding sectors. So facing an approaching storm, what can Korea do to bolster the country's job market?
And for more on this topic, we're now joined by David Swan, Managing Director at recruitment company Robert Walters Japan and Korea. Welcome to the program.
It's great to be here.
All right, so I think it's fair for us to say that the strength of a country's economy is very much reflected in the country's employment. So before we get started, let's look at the basics. I mean, a country's employment market and economic growth, how do they tie in?
Well, I think there are two parts to it. The first part is a quantity aspect. And basically, the more people you have employed producing goods and services in an economy, the more growth you'll typically see in that economy. But it's not just a quantity issue. I think there are also a lot to do with the quality, meaning innovation and desirability of the goods and services that they're producing that also drive the growth in the economy.
All right. Well, looking at Korea's employment figures, they're not looking too good, especially when it comes down to youth unemployment. And there are concerns that the situation in the domestic job market is going to get worse as the country pushes ahead with its aggressive corporate restructuring efforts. So what do you make of Korea's labor market right now?
It's an interesting one. I think the point to make, firstly, at 3.5% unemployment, on a global level, that's not considered high. However, there are a number of structural problems, and I think the government's approach right now to corporate restructuring and a lot of the deregulation is the right thing to do. I think there'll be some short-term pain, but longer term for the health of the economy, I think it will benefit the country.
So looking at it in the longer term.
That's right. But as you mentioned, there are some structural problems, particularly with regards to youth unemployment. I think a lot of that is being driven by an overprotection of permanent senior employees and a very rigid age-based seniority salaries system that I think means that costs will typically go up year on year for companies, and they're not able to do anything with underperforming employees. In addition to that, I think there's also some problems with the tendency towards Korean candidates to want to work for large, big-name global companies, and these are the companies that are not necessarily producing the jobs, but it's the SMEs where the jobs are, and they're less desirable, and they're having trouble finding qualified staff.
And over the past couple of years, we did see a number of multinational firms enter the Korean job market, and I think they did help to provide more jobs, I guess. So what kind of scale and significance are we talking about when we're talking about these firms?
Well, I think on a global scale, again, it's not large numbers, but what we are seeing, I think, is an increase in the overall number. 2013 to 2014, there were 48 multinational companies that entered the Korean market. The majority of these companies are coming from recently China, in particular focused on the insurance and telecommunications sectors. We're seeing slight declines in the sort of typical large Western companies that have come here in the past. But against that, we're also seeing an increase in the number of SMEs, international SMEs that are coming into the market.
So they're increasingly playing a bigger part, I guess,
right.
as time goes
Yes.
on. So aside from the sluggish global economy, I mean, everyone's struggling with unemployment, right? But what could be some of the biggest fundamental problems in Korea's labor market then?
Well, I think it gets back to this overprotection of permanent employees. I think when you've got that situation combined with the rigid salary schemes that are based on rises as people get older, I think that it makes it very difficult for companies to manage their costs effectively as the economy goes through various cycles. And so what they tend to do to get around that is to not employ new people and to rely very heavily on the short-term, low-paid contract market, which is also an issue here in Korea.
Well, since you are the managing director of Korea and Japan branch of a recruitment company, how does Korea's job market compare to that of Japan?
Well, it's interesting. Japan's population started declining a couple of years ago, and it's got to the point now where there are about 2 open jobs for every job seeker nationwide. And there are huge mismatches between the skills that are available and the skills that are in demand. So there are certain sectors, such as construction, where there are about 6 open jobs for every job seeker. Medical doctors, about 5 to 1. Engineers, 4 to 1. So it's become a very, very talent-short market. Korea, on the other hand, still hasn't reached peak population, hasn't started declining. However, it will start to decline somewhere between 2020 and 2030. So I think in that sense, we'll start to see Korea follow the trends, that path, exactly. So we will, that's something that is I think, a feature of the market. I think both markets have very rigid corporate structures, so there's a lot of similarities there. I think both markets don't fully utilise the female talent that they have available. I think Korea's youth unemployment situation is probably slightly more severe than Japan's is. However, Korea has, in general, a higher level of English than Japan does. Korea is currently about the eighth highest in Asia.
Oh, wow.
Japan is third from the bottom.
Oh, wow.
So,
I didn't know that.
So that makes it somewhat easier, I think, for companies looking to hire bilingual talent here.
So with all those problems, I guess, what are some of the most important factors or issues that stand at the center of Korea's job market right now? And what should the government and the individual do in order to, I guess, overcome these obstacles?
Well, I think the government is, as I mentioned earlier, I think the government is doing the right thing with the restructuring. I think continuing to deregulate industries, make it easier for free market forces to work and for companies to operate here in the Korean market. I think continue to encourage the foreign direct investment that they have been encouraging. I think they need to provide some level of support for SMEs to make them more attractive to the job seekers that are out there. And I think they need to encourage younger folks to get more real world experience and perhaps focus a little less on the
Academics.
Academics, that's right.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight today.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back tomorrow with more business news that matters to you. Until then, goodbye.